Hey friends, Sleepy here, and welcome to a brand new discussion vlog. Got a great topic for us to discuss today, and you guys know I would love for you to participate, so feel free to leave a comment sharing your thoughts on today's topic. If this is one of those topics that maybe you would rather film a video response for, that would be great as well. I just ask you guys let me know about your video response. That way I can find it, I'll watch it, and then I can post a link to your video response as a comment on this video so other people can find your video response. I do appreciate everybody who participates in these discussion vlogs. It's always great to get different perspectives and hear your guys' thoughts on the topics. I also enjoy watching your video responses, so anyone who takes the time to film a video response to my videos, I really do appreciate it. You guys are awesome. So today's topic, I wanted to talk about how modern gaming has been driving me to go to past generations like 8th gen and before. I've been really enjoying a lot of 7th gen games and 6th gen games, and it's just kind of how where modern gaming is for me. Now, my only modern console I own for the current modern 9th gen is the Xbox Series X. I don't have a PlayStation 5, and it has to do with just like a lack of games. And for actually having 9th gen only games, so meaning games that weren't released on 8th gen, is like maybe 10 games total, because I have 16 games total for the Series X, but a couple of the games that are on it actually got 8th gen versions as well. But actually having like just 9th gen only, like they only work or were only released on 9th gen, has been really slim for me. You know, like 10 titles or less, which is absolutely crazy to think that, you know, we're 4 years in and there's barely any 9th gen exclusive titles. You know, I mean, the systems obviously can play your 8th gen game, which is what I use my Series X to play a lot of it. I have like 300 8th gen games for just the Xbox One alone, and I haven't checked my PS4 number in a while, but I think it's at like 70 or 80 titles or something. So, you know, a little under 400 games for 8th gen. And so my Series X has mostly been used for 8th gen, but when it comes to 9th gen, I don't find as many games that are interesting or appealing to me. I got my little list here of notes with some bullet points just to keep me from straying too far off the beaten path, and just to make sure I talk about all the topics and thoughts that I had. But for me, just really, modern gaming has just really been making me miss the past gens and the older gaming and what gaming used to be for me. I've been seeing other people filming videos talking about the similar experiences with modern gaming, and just been seeing a lot of people just saying, you know, like, you know, gaming's not as fun as it used to be. And I just wanted to discuss this topic with you guys, share my thoughts on it, and get your guys' thoughts as well. So for first off, the thing is, this is every year I seem to find less and less games that appeal to me, and that's been a trend that's been happening since like 2020. Obviously the pandemic hit that time, and it did affect a lot of game studios, but that's when I started noticing that like I was finding less games coming out that were really interesting me for 8th gen and then for 9th gen, and it just seemed like, you know, they were releasing less and less games that really appealed to me. You know, there wasn't as many focus like on single player as there used to be. There's this big focus on the multiplayer centric games, and some of the games, you know, wanting to push politics on you and other agendas in them, which I don't agree with, but they, you know, they try to force it on you. So I've had to boycott some games, and just, you know, I just keep finding less and less games that appeal to me, and it's just sad because I've just been a big gamer. I've been gaming since 1989 when I was 4 years old with the NES and Super Mario Brothers, and it's just really sad to see where gaming has gone to when it was just so amazing over the years growing up as a kid. So I just, you know, I find just less games that I really am enjoying that are for me. Like this year, I'm excited for my big main game, though, is Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2. I can't wait for that game. Comes out in September. I've been wanting that game since they announced it. I love the Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine on the Xbox 360. It was also on PS3. That game was fantastic, awesome. So that's one of the big games I was looking forward to this year that I do have pre-ordered. But there's not too many other games coming out for Series X that I'm really like that excited about that I have pre-order anything. There's a couple of Nintendo Switch games I'd like to get, but overall there's not like a whole lot of games that I find that appeal to me anymore. Just so many of them are just focused on being online, multiplayer kind of games, or just games that just don't really interest me. So for me personally, I just keep finding less and less games that appeal to me in 9th gen. A lot of AAA games are no longer fun and unique. The companies don't really seem to take as many risks as they did back in like 6th gen and 7th gen days, where they try out new IPs, and they would release games that weren't always the best, but sometimes they'd get a cult following and they would become popular. They try stuff new. Nowadays it's kind of like, I just want to go with Halo. Yeah, give me another Halo. Give me another Gears. Release Gears 5. Release Gears 6. They're not like coming out with a new IP like a Gears of War or something. They just want to release the same thing that sells. The same. Play it safe. Don't try any risks or anything. And that's a real shame. I've been enjoying a lot more AA titles than AAA games, as those game studios seem to have a more focus on wanting to make really fun and enjoyable games. And some of these studios, like Teon here, who made this wonderful RoboCop Rogue City for Xbox Series X, they're a small AA studio. They still have that passion for games. You can tell it when you play a game that they create. They have the love of the lore. They also made that wonderful Terminator Resistance game. And, these were people who are real fans of that franchise. And you can tell that with the Easter eggs they put into this, how these tie into the movies, how they don't try to change the characters or the way they act. They just build upon the character, and you get to go a little more in-depth into the character, like Murphy here as RoboCop. They don't try to change him or anything or try to disrupt the lore. They're very faithful to it, and it really feels like you're playing a RoboCop movie when you play this game. But you don't have a lot of studios like that, especially if they're big AAA ones. They don't really have that love for the games they release. You can tell a lot of them are just kind of, they just release them as cash grabs and they throw them out as fast as they can, and it doesn't seem like they really put a lot of time and effort into them. They just wanted to rehash old stuff just to get your money. But that's why I've been finding that I like a lot more AA games and indie titles and stuff for modern gaming. And I know there's people have mentioned that in other videos where people are like, I don't really find anything on modern game. People are like, oh, what are you talking about? I find tons of indie games and AA games. And people are like, yeah, but as much as I love indie games, a lot of them have like old style graphics, I want the powerhouse AAA titles, the games that really push the Series X or PlayStation 5 to the limit, like an Elden Ring type of game. That's the kind of games I'm looking for modern gaming. I want huge open worlds with amazing, stunning graphics, and I want games that only play on 9th gen consoles. Like, you have to have a 9th gen to play this game. That's the kind of experience I'm looking for. We got that where with like the 360, games that wouldn't work on the original Xbox, and then when we got to Xbox One, you had games that would not work on the 360, that kind of thing. Now, there's a few games like that for 9th gen, but not like it used to be in the past. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I've heard other people mention the same thing. They're talking about like, yeah, I like these indie games and AA studios, but for modern gaming, I really want big AAA titles that we're not receiving. What's the point in having a really powerful console if you just play old indie games that could run on an original Xbox? Another thing that's annoying too, and it started with the 8th gen really, but in 9th gen is just, you have to install your games. You can't just pop in a title and play it. Like, I can just pop in this Ridge Racer Unbounded for Xbox 360, and I can just pop it in and play it right off the disc. With modern gaming, we have to install these games. You have to get them installed before you can even enjoy them. And it depends on how your internet is, because not everybody has the best internet in the world. My internet is pretty decent, about mid-tier. I found that one of my biggest issues with my internet connection was the router I was using was a really old, outdated router from years ago. I got a wonderful gaming router that I found, a Nighthawk one, from a thrift store, that little thrift store that you guys have heard me talk about, where all the proceeds go to help the cats and dogs and get them adopted and food and stuff. Well, that really boosted my speeds, but it's still annoying that, you get a new game and you got to sit there, and sometimes it can take forever to install depending on how your internet is. I know my buddy Dean tell me, like, when he installs an Xbox game, it'll suck all the bandwidth and it could just take hours to get it installed. And then after it's installed, then it's also got to do an update to it too, and sometimes they got huge patches for them. Very annoying that, they have to be updated. Which goes to my next point. A lot of games are released broken are bug filled or full of glitches. And there's been so many games, where I didn't buy it and I've been waited a little bit to get it, and I hear people talking about how oh, the game's got game-breaking bugs, it's glitching out, you can't even really play it, it deleted your save data. And I've heard about people having issues like that. It almost makes you like, well, I might want to wait 5 months before I even play this new game till they iron out all the bugs and get new patches out and stuff out there, which is really sad. They release these games broken, bug-filled, because the publishers, or EAs and whatever, Microsoft, whoever, they just want to get them out on a certain date and, we can fix it later kind of attitude, instead of back in the day, they had to get it fixed and be ready to be on launch day. I mean, they did have updates and stuff during 7th gen for 360 and PS3. There was a few updates and stuff for the original Xbox, but mostly when those titles were released, that's the state you got them in, whether it was good or bad, you got them released. But a lot of times, you at least had a game that actually was playable. A lot of times in these 9th gen titles, it could take 3 or 4 patches. I mean, that Cyberpunk 2077 is a great example. I really enjoyed that game, but I played it after several patches, and it even got another new patch recently and upgrades and stuff to it, and they got DLC added to it. But that was supposed to be the game of the year released, and a lot of people were disappointed because it was just broken, buggy, glitchy mess, and it just really turned a lot of people off, and it really soured people's look at that CD Projekt Red, and it really hurt their reputation because people felt like, man, you went from releasing amazing games like Witcher to Cyberpunk. Now Cyberpunk is amazing, but when it released, I just saw all the hate on it, and people were just pissed off with how broken and buggy that game was. Constant need of day one patches too, which is irritating. You're like, you bought a game, you finally got it, and then boom, it has a day one patch. You gotta wait for it to upload. Now I can finally play it. Or there's some titles where it'll be constantly being updated. You'll pop the game and like, oh, I haven't played the game in a week. Let me check out. Oh, look, another update. Great. Oh, pop in a different game. Oh, look, I haven't played this game in 3 months. Oh, here's another update. So some games do get constant updates, and it really does affect a lot of the games that they have multiplayer, because they're balancing issues as far as if there's competitive multiplayer, they might be balancing weapons or maps and different things. But there are some single player games that I haven't played for a while. I'll pop them in and, oh, here's another update. Oh, here's another update. And I gotta wait 30, 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours sometimes to play a game. And then if it's like, oh, well, this game's updating, I'll play a different game. Well, what happens is, then it throttles the download and it lowers it down, and sometimes it won't even update. It'll actually just pause it. You'll play a game, and then you'll go back to it and like, oh, great, it didn't update, which is absolutely irritating. And then at that point, I have to leave the console on and then pick a different console to play, and then it kind of kills the mood sometimes. Like, oh, I wanted to play this new Series X game. Well, I only had a few hours, and now I got to install and update it. Well, I'll have to wait till the next day to play it. So that can be quite irritating. Yeah, I mentioned the constant updates keeping you from enjoying the games. The heavy emphasis of a lot of microtransactions these days, the loot boxes and that kind of stuff. I do enjoy DLC, but sometimes some games have way too many of them. Like I know the Dynasty, some of the newer Dynasty Warrior games will have something like 100 little stupid cosmetic packs. Like, oh, you want some extra music from older games? Yeah, you gotta pay me $3. You want costumes from past Dynasty Warrior games? You gotta pay me $3. You want stages from past games? Yeah, you gotta pay me money. They strip out stuff from the game that they want you to pay for, which is kind of irritating. Cosmetic packs. There's a lot of stuff that I won't purchase or buy. But I know some people enjoy that kind of stuff. I know for like a lot of racing games, so you can add some great car packs and things to that. Those I can understand because it really adds to the game and gets you new cars. Sometimes they have to do some new licensing for it. But some of them are just absolutely ridiculous and stupid. And then I don't like how some games, being able to progress further, especially if you're playing like the multiplayer part, they throw it behind paywalls, and they have all the season passes for you to enjoy extra content stuff. You have to buy them, which I can understand. For some games it's great to have expansion, but some of them the companies just do way too much when it comes, and they try to nickel and dime you after you paid like $70 for a game. They want even more money. And then there's even been some companies that have locked out features. Like I know that Like a Dragon series, one of the newest ones or something, locked out some features that you had to get this DLC, which is a basic feature of the game they had locked out, which I found out that really ticked me off and kept me from wanting to buy the game now because of shit like that. Also, this time, companies are really pushing a lot of digital-only titles. The biggest one that's been released has been that Alan Wake 2, but I heard this week that they actually were talking about releasing a physical version of Alan Wake 2 later this year. I don't know if it's going to be released everywhere, or if it's a company like a Limited Run, or a smaller company is going to release a version of it. But, that really kind of turned me off because I don't like having digital-only titles because you really don't have ownership of them, and they can take your rights to play them away at any point. And it's happened to people with content they bought with like movies and music and stuff. There was actually a couple movies I bought on the Xbox 360 I completely forgot about. There was a couple episodes of South Park I bought on there, and I went to go to play them, and it said, sorry, the license for this is no longer valid, or you no longer can experience this show anymore. So literally I paid for those. There was just a couple bucks years and years ago, and I can't watch them anymore. So I don't really like that shit that they do a lot of that with these digital-only titles. And I know another issue here too that people mention is like physical copies don't always contain the full game on them. This RoboCop is on the disc. Teon said they put the whole game on there, which is awesome, and the game did install from the disc. But there are times you'll buy a game and the entire game isn't on there, and you can tell by trying to uninstall the game like offline. Like if your console's offline, you try to install it, and you'll see that like, oh well, this should be like a 50 gig game, and there's only like 10 gigs on there, or like 4 gigs, and then you find out the rest of the game. Like I heard that Halo Infinite game is a big example where only part of the game is on the disc. The rest of it you have to get online, and there's actually a website. It's something like Will My Game Work Offline or something. Somebody created a list of games that'll tell you if you can install them off the disc, or if you have to have updates, or you have to install most of the game from online. Now there are some, obviously you need an update for a certain game, but it's nice to actually have the physical full game on the freaking disc. If you didn't have access to the internet, you're not going to be able to play that game, because it'll tell you, well, this game requires additional content in order for you to play. And I've had friends tell me that they had that issue with certain Xbox games, even some PlayStation titles as well. Companies like Ubisoft and EA don't think we should own our games. I mean, they come out and people just saying like, oh, we should get used to not owning our games. Like they come out and tell you that. Like they don't even hide the fact anymore. They just kind of came out and said those in statements and stuff, which I don't like. So, like fuck them and their bullshit with that. So companies want to do something like that, just I'll boycott and I won't play their games. You got to vote with your wallet. If you don't like something, you got to speak up and just don't support it by not giving them your money, and let them know, hey, I don't like this. So many companies wanting to offer their games as a service model, basically wanting you to pay them a monthly fee to play their games, or it's always got to be online. There are some games that are like that crew game, that racing game, they shut down the servers. Now that if you have a disc for the 360, or if they might have been a 8th gen port, it's useless because you had to be online to play it. Even any single player stuff on there have to be online. So that's basically a coaster now, just a waste. You can't even play that game anymore because of being a live service model. You can't even play it offline. Your internet goes out. Well, sorry, you can't play the game because you got to connect to the internet in order to enjoy it. So I don't enjoy that. The heavy emphasis of Game Pass, and then PlayStation, I think it was like PlayStation Now or something, they have their own little like service that gives you games. Now I know people like my brother love the Game Pass because it gives them a lot of games to choose from for like $15 a month, but for me it's just not worth it because the games don't always stay on Game Pass, and they get pulled, and you might be in the middle playing a game, and now that it's pulled, you can't play it anymore unless you go out and like buy the digital copy of it on there. And it just seems like 9th gen is all about like streaming like boxes, like PlayStation 5, the Series X. It's just it's their Game Pass machines. I saw another video guy mention. He's like, yeah, they feel like Game Pass boxes. Like it's literally like a DVR box. When you would get stuff from your cable, and you could go to a in demand and something, or buy it through there. He's like, that's what it feels like. And I kind of agree. Yeah, like, Microsoft's big emphasis has been this Game Pass, but they've been seeing that model has not been really working. They're not really been making the money off of it. And as awesome as it sounds, it's just not that great for modern gaming. For me personally, I just don't really enjoy it. Now there are people like my brother who love it because, you know, he'll play a game, try it out, beat it, and he's done and he moves on, and he's not someone that wants to go back and replay games that much anymore, as his time is limited, so he just kind of wants to play the new experiences, have it, then move on. And so that's why he likes Game Pass, because he can use it on his PC. But I'm not a big fan of the Game Pass model or anything like that, so I don't pay for it because I don't use it. You know, I might go months and months without playing a Series X game. Like right now, the last few months, I've only been playing original Xbox and 360 titles. So I haven't been playing any Series X games. I've been using my Series X for backwards compatibility, but I haven't been playing any modern games. Modern consoles do require the internet and even to work. So starting with the 8th gen, you know, Xbox One to Series X, all of those consoles have to connect to the internet at least once to get the rest of the download files. You know, I could get an old Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3, and I could just right out of the box pop a disc in and play it. Now, maybe the game might not work as well because it might need a little update, but at least I could pop the disc in of this and actually be able to play it without having to have the internet, which sucks. You know, you have to set up your console at least once online and get your profile set up and all that kind of stuff, and it requires the internet, which sucks. You know, having to have the internet. You know, they don't even have, like back in the day, where you could download files onto like a flash drive and plug it into your console to get it started with like Xbox 360 and stuff had some things like that, or update files you could get, or sometimes they even released them on a disc that you could get. They don't do that kind of stuff anymore. Backwards compatibility on the Xbox needs internet to work first, so like you pop in the Jurassic Park the game. Now the Xbox One wasn't originally built for backwards compatibility. It was something they added later through software. So when it does this emulation, you actually pop your disc in. It doesn't install the game off of the disc. It doesn't play the game off the disc. It actually downloads a digital version from their server onto your console for you to be able to play it. And it'll tell you like, oh, well, this game needs an update, and it'll install it. It'll be various sizes depending on the game. But once the game's on your console, you know, then you can play it offline or whatever, but you have to make sure that you get it installed first, which is kind of a bummer. The other thing too is with the backwards compatibility is that sadly not every game is backwards compatible, because it's not hardware backwards compatibility, it's software. So they have to pay for licensing and stuff, and some games have been delisted, and so some of these games will only work with the physical disc version. You'll still be able to download the digital copy onto your console, but you have to have a disc copy in order to get it, because the other ones have been delisted, and there's been a lot of games being delisted lately, which is irritating. So I do love my backwards compatibility, but it still requires the internet to enjoy it. I can't just pop a 360 game into my Series X and play it. If I was offline, it wouldn't be able to load the disc at all, because it has to connect to the server at least once to download the game, which is a flaw of the system, but I can understand just with licensing and issues, and they didn't want to have to build in actual architecture of the 360 in it to make it run those. So that's why I keep my old consoles, so I can at least guarantee I can still play them. Companies don't really seem to take a whole lot of risks and start new IPs. You know, we don't get things like Dragon Age Origins. This is the Ultimate Edition that has all the DLC, and it was just amazing that some of the games that came out at this time, Gears of War, they had wonderful games like this X-Men Origins Wolverine Uncaged Edition, those Transformers games. You just don't get the amazing experiences that we used to get in past gens like 7th gen. I mean, even 8th gen has some wonderful titles in it, but 9th gen, there's really not too many of games coming out. You know, like I can say, you know, I really love this RoboCop game, but there's not a whole lot of like, man, I gotta get that console for that game. Now this Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 is going to be exclusive to PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X, so I'm really looking forward to that, but I don't get as many experiences. You know, they don't try out, you don't get as many games like the Bound by Flame or the First Templar here. You know, you don't get that many games. Lord of the Rings Conquest, games like Mafia 2, things like LA Noire. You know, you just don't get games like that. There's even older ones here, you know, like the Prince of Persia games from the 6th gen. You know, they were just amazing. The original Call of Duty Finest Hour was awesome. You know, we just don't get as many amazing games as we did then. Not like in today's day, we just don't get stuff like that. Alright, so we'll move on to our next topic, which is 8th and 9th gen is filled with a lot of remakes and remastered titles. And this is somebody mentioned too, I've seen, they were like, this is kind of the generation of remakes and remasters and re-releases of older gen games onto modern hardware. Now, I do enjoy sometimes, when they'll re-release an old classic game and you'll get updated graphics, and sometimes they'll add new content to it. But it's just crazy how many of them there really are. I have a stack here, and this isn't even all of them that I own. And it shows you that, like, people are like, well, why do you buy them? Well, because I love those old games and I want to play them and experience them on new hardware. But it's kind of sad that, like, a lot of the games in your collection are just remastered versions or remakes of old games from the past. And I got a nice little stock here just to share with you guys to show like how many there really are. And this is not all of them for my collection either. And all three companies are guilty. Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony do this. So I got a couple Nintendo ones here. We have Metroid Prime Remastered, so the remastered version from GameCube onto the Nintendo Switch. Fantastic game, but again, this is just an old GameCube game that they now remade for the Nintendo Switch. This is kind of cool, but for people who get to experience these old games, but you have Super Mario 3D All-Stars, you got to play Mario 64 from 64, Mario Sunshine from the GameCube, and Super Mario Galaxy from the Nintendo Wii on the Nintendo Switch. Still fantastic games. That's why I bought this. I could play them on modern hardware with the Nintendo Switch. You can play it portably. It's awesome, but again, these are three old games that were ported to modern consoles. You get a little, quality of life improvements and stuff on them, but still, they're old games they took. Another one here, fantastic game, but it's just a re-release of an old 7th gen game, and that was Ghostbusters, a video game. This is the remastered version, which they did add the DLC content into the game, which is just little cosmetic things. Sadly, they stripped out the multiplayer that was really fun from the 7th gen. They were supposed to do it in a post-launch, but that never happened. Again, amazing game, but it's just, a remastered version of a 7th gen, just with a new fresh coat of paint. Another one here for PlayStation 4. I love the Yakuza series, and I played the original Yakuza games 1 and 2 on the PlayStation 2. Well, they did release this Yakuza Kiwami edition, and I also have Yakuza Kiwami 2, which is basically the remake of the first game with better graphics and new story elements and stuff added to the game, which I think is a great improvement. But again, it's still taking something that was old and re-releasing it for modern games. Another one here, you have Dark Souls 2, which I loved on 360, but there was a Xbox One version. Mass Effect was amazing on the 360 PS3, but you can get this Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Mine's still actually brand new and sealed because I haven't got to it. I got it for a really cheap price. But again, there's all three games that were amazing on the 360, remade for modern games. Another one here, which is awesome games, but again, they're from the past. The Dead Island Definitive Collection, 2 complete games, plus all the bonus content in there. So you have your Dead Island, and then you have the Dead Island Riptide, and these are the definitive editions. But again, it's not a new Dead Island, which they did release Dead Island 2, which is awesome. But again, this is games from the past ported to 8th gen consoles. Another one here, these were fantastic games on the 360. I loved them on there, beat all 3 of them more than once. The BioShock collection, so again, remade for the modern consoles. You could play BioShock, BioShock 2, and BioShock Infinite in this collection. Game that I loved on the 360 that was exclusive to it, Dead Rising. So now you can play, Dead Rising ported again with updated visuals and stuff. But again, another game that was ported. This is really kind of cool. Was Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled. I got for Xbox One here. So this is taking an old PS1 game, which I definitely can see is worth it. But again, taking an old IP, an old game, and releasing it for modern consoles. Another one here, Alan Wake Remastered, was awesome on 360, but they did release this remastered version on more than just Xbox, so finally PlayStation players could play it, and PC and stuff. Awesome game, but again, just basically the same old Alan Wake that we got before, but with a new fresh coat of paint. Resident Evil Origins Collector, so you get to play Resident Evil 0 or Resident Evil 1, the old GameCube versions, updated obviously with better visuals and graphics, but again, old games ported. Resident Evil 4, which there's two versions of this. This is the original Resident Evil 4 that's been pretty much ported to every freaking console. And then there's the new one that came out with the Resident Evil 4 remake, which changed the game a little bit, added some new elements to it. But again, there's another example. They released Resident Evil 5, ported it here with all the DLC to modern consoles. This was a really cool game. I really love this. This is a true remastered and remake, like completely changing how the game plays, but it still has the elements of it. Resident Evil 2, fantastic game. I do need to finish beating this, but again, taking a established game and just putting a modern spin on it with Resident Evil 2. Another one here which I have not played but I would like to, Resident Evil 3. Again, the original Resident Evil 3 was awesome, but this is a new remake, remastered version of Resident Evil 3 that changes up the game and the play and everything, and it's a more modern experience. Fantastic game, but still, taking an old game. And then here's another one that I really loved. I beat it, and I do plan to beat it again. That was Dead Space, and it's exclusive to the Series X and PlayStation 5 PC. But again, it's just a remake version of Dead Space that we had on the 360, and throws into, a little bit modern stuff to it. Changes some of the story a little bit, not a whole lot. Adjusting some of the characters, changing some of the characters' models, even changing some characters in the game. And still has the overall story, but they did improve a lot of stuff on it. But again, it's still just, it's another version of Dead Space again. So, you can see a whole bunch of wonderful games. I love having them on my modern consoles, love having on my Switch, love having my PS4, love having my Xbox One, and be able to play on my Series X. But again, there's still a lot of remakes and remastered. And there's some games that get remastered that really don't need to, like The Last of Us 1. Okay, cool, it was on PS3. Okay, well, here's a PS4 version. Okay, cool. That's cool. We'll get a little bit updated. I can keep it out. Oh, well, now is a PlayStation 5 version. Like, well, how many times do we need to release that same game? Sometimes they release them way too much, or a game won't even be that old, and they'll release a remastered version. Now, sometimes, you can understand, like that Crash Team Racing or the Resident Evil 2, when they do a remastered or remake version, they're taking an old PS1 game and bringing it up, 3 or 4 generations later with modern hardware, and maybe they were able to do stuff they couldn't do. So those I understand, but I do love the remasters and remakes. That's why I buy them. You guys see how many I have in my collection. But it just sucks that there's so much more focus on those than like new IPs. And for me, I have to just keep going back to gaming past. And even with modern stuff, I'm just playing these basically remakes of old games that I loved in the past, just with new coat of paint on them, which kind of sucks. But that's what I find a lot in modern games, and that's why I have so many of them. And I'm glad that they make them, but I would love them to make some new games in those series, or like have some new IPs. Single player games that have DRM hidden in them that requires internet, like this game here, Gears Tactics, which I had no idea about it. My buddy Dean told me, he read it, and I tested it out, and yep, it's a single player game. There's no multiplayer at all, but you have to be online to be able to play it and access the game, which sucks. I was really getting into this game, really enjoying it, but it has that hidden DRM in it, meaning that I cannot play this game offline. It requires the internet, and I don't even know if it mentions that anywhere on the case at all. That it doesn't say anywhere like online required that I can see on here. This requires downloads for significant storage, broadband connection, fees might apply, but nowhere on here does it say like needed. Usually they'll have it on there like requires internet. There'll be a little thing on there saying that it needs the internet. Well, this game you have to have it because it has hidden DRM in it. That if you don't connect it to the server, you can't even get into the game and play, which sucks. Like, this is a single player game. Why the fuck does it need to be online? So there's other examples of games like that. And I know my buddy Dean just said, well, fuck that game, and he's not even going to play Gears Tactics now, and going to get rid of his copy because you can't even play the game because you have to be on the fucking internet to play, which is horse shit. I hate that. A lot of modern games have less content than previous gens. Like I mentioned, that Mario Party title that they released for the Nintendo Switch is pretty bare bones compared to older Mario Party titles. It even happened with even Dragon Age did that, from Dragon Age Origins to Dragon Age 2, and that was just the 360 days. But they do that more and more nowadays. It seems like they just strip out and make more bare bones versions of games, and they're not as long as they used to be. They don't have as much content in them, or they pad them with filler content that isn't really fun and exciting to take on, which is really annoying. And then for me, which I just understand because the gaming industry is trending more to being online all the time, is there's a lot less focus on single player games being released and more focus on the multiplayer centric games, your Fortnites and the Halo multiplayer parts. There's Call of Duty games that don't even have a campaign in them. It was one of those Black Ops 4 or something. I don't know, one of the Call of Duty games I found didn't even have a campaign in it, so I just ended up selling the game off because I don't play the multiplayer anymore. And it has, you can play the zombies, which is fun, but when I played one of the zombies on one of the games, and you got 4 different versions, it's basically still the same thing. So I'm not gonna keep a game just to play that's only for multiplayer purposes only. So I got rid of that, which is really sad, because I love playing my single player games. I love being able to play things like the Dead Space single player, awesome experience. RoboCop single player, awesome experience. I love that stuff. Your Resident Evil 2 single player experience, amazing. I'm not really into the multiplayer that is out there today, but I can understand, I'm not the target audience anymore. The younger generations like to be online, to be in the competitive stuff and play with friends and that kind of thing, which is great. I just think we should have both, some single player games and multiplayer games. I know that even my beloved Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 is going to have a wonderful campaign to play through, but it's also now going to be have some multiplayer competitive modes. It's going to have some co-op modes, which I think is cool. I do like playing campaigns co-op with friends. Like I played the Gears of War and Halo with friends and stuff, but I just find less and less single-player games being released these days as the focus is more on the multiplayer games because they make more money for the companies. They're able to charge for their weapon packs and skins and stuff, so I understand that part. But for me, I just really have been finding less and less games that I enjoy playing. I've got, for 7th gen, I have over 730 games just for the 360, and then I've got 100 some games for PlayStation 3. I've probably got about 100 some games for the Wii, and I've got over 100 games for the Wii U, and I got a ton of games for 6th gen. I've got over 1,200 games for the original Xbox, and I've got about 700 games for PlayStation 2, and I got about 150 some games, I think it is, for GameCube. So I have a lot of old games. It's just modern gaming, I just find less and less and less games that appeal to me, but I'm okay with it. At some point, I do have to just stop playing. I'm probably eventually going to stop playing modern games because we are going to that all digital future, and I just find less and less games that appeal to me, and I'm okay with it. I've come to terms with it. I mean, it kind of sucks. I would like to keep playing the new games, but I've got such a massive library behind me. Just this wall alone could keep me busy for the rest of my life, or 10 lifetimes. So for me, I'm just going to continue to play the games that I already have, and I'll pick up a few of these new games that come out, like the Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 and a couple others that are coming out, some of the Mario titles and stuff. And it may really much just be me really focusing to just Nintendo's consoles in the future, because they do at least release some new fun Mario titles and games that I'm into. But for Microsoft and Sony, I just find less and less games every year. And it's sad because I used to find so many games a month, like during 360 days. So many games that come out, you couldn't even keep up with them. That's why I rented a lot of games, because I was able to play and experience them. And if I really liked them, I would then buy them used later on. I couldn't buy 10 games coming out at 50 and 60 bucks a pop, but I could go to my video store and pay $5 and rent them for a week, play them and beat them. I really miss that kind of stuff. And it's just how our whole gaming has shifted. So many studios have been closing down. Microsoft has been closing a lot of studios down, and it's just really, really a shame just to see where modern gaming is going. But unfortunately, that is where we are at and where gaming is headed. So for me, I'm probably just going to be ending with my Series X. I don't know if I'll ever get a PlayStation 5. I mean, it's great that the PlayStation 5 can play their PlayStation 4 games, but I don't have a huge library for the PS4. I have 300 games from Xbox One that I can play my Series X, which is great, but there's really no point in me spending $500 or $600 to get a PlayStation 5 just to play about 100 PS4 games when I can play my PS4 Pro. I'm not going to notice that big of a improvement on the PS5 versus the PS4 version of that game. So I don't know if I'll ever get a PS5 or not, but that's my thoughts, guys. So that's where why modern gaming has really been pushing me to go to Gaming Pass, because I find it more fun to play these older games, as they just seem to release less and less games that really appeal to me. But that's okay. You know, I know that the gaming is shifting to a new generation, younger people that like different kind of gaming than I did, and I'm just okay with that. But that's my thoughts on it. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts as well, so let me know your guys' thoughts on modern gaming. You know, do you guys really like it? Has it been really exciting, or has it been kind of pushing you to go back to the past like it has been me? You know, feel free to leave a comment. I love reading your guys' comments. If you'd rather film a video response, that would be awesome as well. I just ask you let me know about it so I can check it out. I'll post a link to your video response as a comment so other people can check it out as well. I want to thank you guys for watching. Take care. You guys have an amazing day, and Sleepy will see you next time.